Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. Week one of the college football season did not disappoint. We had humongous top 10 matchups between Ohio State and Texas, LSU and Clemson, and then Notre Dame and Miami. As we record this on a Monday morning, waiting for the Notre Dame and Miami game to end late last night. Getting this show out to you on Monday. If the audio sounds a little bit different, that is because we are still on the road. But welcome into Saturday Cadence. My name is Blake Biscardi, and I am your host as we do our recap edition of the podcast. And we're going to start nowhere else than Columbus, Ohio, with Ohio State and Texas. What a game that this was! It was a defensive battle, a masterclass by Matt Patricia, but also a little bit of nerves for Arch Manning, was a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to get to all that in just a minute. Main takeaways from the game, though. Julian Sayin and Arch Manning, the two quarterbacks, we wondered who would perform at a high level. Would either of them look like the moment was too big? And I think for Arch Manning, and now I'm going to say this with a precursor, being in that stadium on Saturday, I don't think any opposing quarterback would have been successful in that environment. The Horseshoe was on absolute fire the entire time. Pre-game Stadium, Ohio, after the Buckeyes ran out, that place didn't sit down the whole entire afternoon. It was electric in that atmosphere. And say what you want about noon games. I get that these games are better at night, especially when you have these marquee matchups. But I'm telling you right now, that was as good an environment as there was in college football because that crowd was on fire, and it helped because Arch Manning was uncomfortable for the entire afternoon. So credit to the Ohio State defense for that. He was rushing his throws, his progressions, all of these things. He was throwing off balance. It just affected the game, missing wide open receivers. And that's a credit to Matt Patricia's defense. There was a lot of NFL concepts roped into the scheme there. They were confusing the Texas offensive line and Arch Manning, giving them a lot to process pre-snap and post-snap. The way Patricia disguised coverages and blitzes, moved around Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese. Those were the two defensive MVPs, in my opinion. And then offensively, Julian Sayin wasn't asked to do a whole lot. Ryan Day said this in his post-game press conference that it was admittedly a conservative game plan. It was admittedly a limited game plan in terms of operating the full offense and the full playbook. They said they didn't want to give him too much to process and too much to account for in his first start because he didn't have to do all of that. Now, if the game dictated it, Ryan Day said in hindsight he could have handled it, but the Buckeyes never really needed to do more than what he did. Most of his throws were pretty short. They were routine, rhythmic, really did not attempt many balls down the field aside from that 40-yard touchdown to Carnell Tate to break the game open at the beginning of the fourth quarter. That was an electric play by Sayin and Tate. Some uncharacteristic drops early from Jeremiah Smith, but he was still more effective in this game than he was in the Cotton Bowl, 6 catches, 43 yards. But the biggest takeaway of this game, yeah, we're talking about the quarterbacks. Yeah, we're talking about the defense. But this game was decided inside the 5 yard line and on fourth down. When you look at what Ohio State was able to do in goal to go situations, whether or not they were on offense or defense, that's where the difference was in this ball game. Texas went for two early fourth downs, 1 for 2 on that drive. Ohio State ends up getting down the field finally in the second quarter and has a first and goal, then a second and goal, all the way to fourth and goal at the 1 yard line. Ryan Day decided to go for it, which was the right decision. CJ Donaldson popped it in for a touchdown. So Ohio State converts there, whereas Texas, they had another situation where they were in a goal to go, decided to run it with Arch Manning up the middle as a sneak from 1.5 yards away, did not get there. Then there was another instance later in the game, too, where a pass from Arch Manning fell incomplete. Ohio State stood twice inside the 5 yard line. And if you look at this dating back to the end of last season, that is the third straight drive inside the 5 yard line in which Ohio State stalled Steve Sarkisian and Texas. So some soul searching to do there for Sarkisian. And all of the offensive staff of how can they get better in those situations. That was a weakness of Texas last year, a strength of Ohio State's. We were unsure what Ohio State would look like defensively with replacing so many starters and the concerns about interior defensive tackle depth. But Ohio State was up to the challenge. The defense stood tall all afternoon and was able to stop Texas in those occasions, 1 for 5 on fourth down, and that's your big stat right there. Yeah, the quarterbacks kind of cancel each other out in that sense. Arch Manning did get it going toward the end, but this game was decided inside the 5 yard line and on fourth down, some of those overlapping. So credit to Ohio State there and to Texas too. Now, let's talk about Arch Manning and what the Longhorns were able to do late in the fourth quarter. Manning had just 38 passing yards going into the fourth quarter. Very, very mute all day long. Like I said before, uncomfortable. He got hit twice early. Lorenzo Styles and Arvell Reese there were the ones laying the lumber. I think that rattled Arch just a little bit. And as he was reading the defense, and you could see it was hard for him to diagnose anything. Like I said, the crowd noise, pumping that noise in from the stands. He was surrounded. It was probably hell for him, the way this Ohio State crowd was. And it was evident. They did get some stuff going at the end, though. He found some vertical passes down the field, some breaks in that Ohio State defense. He did finish 17 for 30, 170 yards and a touchdown. He also had a costly interception, underthrowing a ball there. Again, thinks he's going to learn and progress. And yeah, there was a lot of hype around Arch Manning. We thought of the two quarterbacks, he would probably be a little bit more poised. It was the opposite. I think we need to come back down to earth a little bit on Arch Manning. Now, on this show, we were not, labeling him as the chosen one like LeBron coming out of high school. No, I mean, Archer Manning, we knew was going to have to grow. We knew he would struggle in the environment, maybe not look so much like that. He did have a big play with his legs on a 2nd and 13 that got a first down and extended the drive. That was a really, really good, timely play from Manning. So he showed some flashes, like we expected in this big game. These teams are going to grow. These teams are going to get better, and they may meet again. And this matchup may look completely different than what we saw on Saturday. And I think that's going to be the case. I mean, Ohio State barely operated its full offense there and struggled to run the football. So those are two problems that Ohio State is likely not going to have as the season progresses now, opening up with Grambling State and then Ohio University before test against Washington and Illinois. But Ohio State, now two straight games against Texas being held under 100 yards. They ran the ball 34 times. Donaldson had 19 carries. Peoples had 10. And then that was only for 77 yards. So 2.3 yards a carry for the Buckeyes. They did score, like I said, CJ Donaldson popping it in from the 1 yard line. The longest run of the day for the Buckeyes was 8 yards. That's where the cause of concern would be if you're saying, okay, what can Ohio State do differently? The Buckeyes barely had 200 yards of offense. That was its lowest output since 2015. But like I said, they didn't have to do more than what they did to win the game. And that was the mindset. It wasn't about flash. It wasn't about scoring points. It wasn't about doing anything other than having one more point than Texas at the end of the game. And Ohio State was able to do that. They were playing fast, disciplined, focused on defense. They really rose to the occasion, Matt Patricia's unit, which now, after silencing a little bit of the doubt there. There was some apprehension from Buckeye fans and some from analysts. Would this be a good hire? I think it clearly was. And now we're not going to overreact to all this week one stuff because teams are going to look very different. There's a lot of new quarterbacks, new faces everywhere. It's going to take time. So we're not going to read too much into week one in one direction or the other. But I do think it's clear that if Ohio State's defense was able to do that to Texas's offense, I think it's clear what we saw on film from Matt Patricia and that scheme and that approach. This Ohio State defense is now the aggressor. It's not with Jim Knowles, it was still good, but it was almost like they would adjust and just kind of restrict you as an offense. Now it looks like Ohio State defensively wants to come take your lunch money. And that's a great sign to see for Ohio State now being the aggressive defense and coming for the quarterback, not being afraid to put pressure on him, disguise looks, all of those things. but I think both of these defenses are going to be world class. We may have just seen the top two defenses in the country, only a 14-7 game. The over-under in the matchup was 47.5. And I thought we'd see a little bit more points than what we saw, but these two defenses are only going to get better. So hats off to both the Buckeyes and the Longhorns there. And like I said, this matchup, a great pulse barometer check for both of these teams, see where they're at, where they need to grow, and they're going to look a lot different come November and December for the playoff run. I do think both of these teams will be there at the end of the season. We'll just see how those matchups shake out. But Ryan Day and Ohio State now 7 straight top 10 wins, 5 consecutive top 10 wins. Think about that. Ohio State's last 5 games have come against top 10 opponents. Just process that stat. Ryan Day was told, "Oh, you can't win the big game. What are you going to do? You can't beat Michigan. None of these things. Is he ever going to get over the hump? Is he ever going to climb the mountain?" They were calling for a job after losing to Michigan last year in November and December. I mean, up until Ohio State kicked the ball off with Tennessee, people wanted Ryan Day fired. They didn't think he had it in him to win the big game. They thought he was in over his head. He was never going to follow Urban Meyer in the way that needed to elevate this program to take it to the next level. What a response from Day and from this coaching staff, from these players, and from the entire program to go on a run like this. We've not seen one like this in college football history now. Ohio State, 5 consecutive top 10 wins. They've earned the right, and no disrespect here, to play Grambling State next week. But Ryan Day, hats off to him for the ultimate competitor that he is. Clearly the right man for the job. That's never been in doubt on this show. However, for everyone who wants to say something about Ryan Day, you're going to have to put yourself on mute because clearly he is the one of the elite coaches, maybe coming for Kirby Smart's title as the quote best coach in college football. But Ryan Day and Ohio State are on an incredible run right now. He was not kidding. It was not motivational fluff when he was at media days saying we're not defending anything, we're attacking. Evident. Stood on business, backed up those words with the play on Saturday against Texas. This Ohio State team is hungry, and I think putting the country a little bit on notice that, yeah, we replaced 14 draft picks. We still have talent. We still reload. We're still moving forward, and we can still contend for a title this season. So, enough on Ohio State, Texas. Incredible game. Both of these teams going to be fine for the rest of the year. Texas fans, for those of you listening, yeah, you lost the game. It stings. Doesn't hurt you in the SEC. You're going to play a schedule that allows you to get quality wins to get back into this discussion you really never left. I don't know why I said back into, but you're not leaving the national title conversation, not leaving the SEC conversation. Going to be fine. Grow, get better. Arch Manning has to diagnose defenses a little bit better. That's going to come with time and experience. I think you guys are going to be fine. Just get ready for Florida in a couple of weeks. Now, transitioning to, I thought we would just run the show with Ohio State, Texas, then we would hit a little bit of LSU and Clemson, then Notre Dame, Miami, but no, 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 no. We've got to talk about Florida State and Alabama. What a game that this was for Mike Norvell, Gus Malzahn, and Tommy Castellanos. My goodness. Calling his shot in the summer. They don't have Nick Saban to save them anymore. I don't know how they're going to be able to stop me. My man backed it up. 9 of 14, 152 yards. 16 carries, was very dynamic with his legs, 78 yards and a touchdown. Tommy Castellanos. Now, walking out of the stadium on Saturday in Columbus, was not completely aware of what was going on in the first quarter, so had to go back and watch this one. Did catch the second half of the game once everything got settled and done from everything we were doing in Columbus. But Florida State came to play. Florida State was 2-10 last year. What was going to be the response from Mike Norvell, this coaching staff, these players? Tommy Castellanos transfers in from Boston College. Norvell hires Gus Malzahn, former head coach at Auburn, as his offensive coordinator. Very similar approach to Ryan Day last year, bringing in Chip Kelly. Now you have former head coaching experience as a coordinator. That's only going to elevate your staff. Gus Malzahn is a tremendous offensive mind. And when you have that extra head coaching experience in your back pocket on your staff, only going to bode good things. And that was evident because Florida State was physical. They won the battle in the trenches, which how many times can you say Alabama lost a game in the trenches? They lost it on both sides in the trenches. Florida State was dominant at the line of scrimmage. They executed well. They played fast. The crowd was into it. Doak was awake and live, and it was exploding with energy the entire time. Florida State was in control of this game early. You saw that from the early drives. They get the touchdown. It's a tie game now. They rattle off 10 points in the second quarter to go up 17-7 at half. And it gets you looking around like, okay, Florida State's for real. This wasn't just a first quarter thing. This wasn't just a first half thing. You're kind of looking at this of, all right, is this going to stand? Is this going to stay? Can Florida State sustain this against Alabama, which some people chose to win the national championship. Some people chose to be in contention in the SEC. My hand is raised in that because I have them going to Atlanta. Now, this doesn't affect that, but it could if they play like this with some of the teams on their schedule. We'll get to LSU in a minute. That's a head-to-head game that I said was the decider for me to go to Atlanta. That still holds true. But Ty Simpson, he wasn't terrible in the game, but Alabama again struggled to run the football. And now part of that was you're down multiple scores. You typically need to throw the football there. But it's difficult if you're an Alabama fan to go from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. How much pressure is the administration? How much pressure are the fans going to put on DeBoer? How much patience are they willing to extend to him? I think DeBoer's a good coach, but now you've coached 14 games in Alabama and you were a two touchdown favorite on the road and you go and lose this game. You end the season losing to Michigan last year, uh, a 7-5 Michigan team at that. How much patience are you going to get? Can they turn it around? I do think Alabama will get it going, but I'm taking a little bit of a pause on the tide here. I need to see them now go win a big game. I think for Florida State, we talked about it, the potential was there. Yeah, they could. The goal for Florida State in this game was, can we keep it competitive? Can they keep it close? That was more the national feel. Clearly, inside the building, they said, we're going to go win this football game. We're going to be the aggressor. Mike Norvell said we wanted to be the ones in control. Florida State clearly was. They rose to the occasion on that, holding Alabama 6 of 17 on third down. That's a big stat. Florida State, they were 5 of 12, but here's the key. Just like I talked about with Ohio State and Texas, Alabama 2 for 5, Florida State on fourth down, 2 for 2. Those are enormous to extend drives and keep them going. When you go for it on fourth down, you've got to be able to execute. Florida State outgained Alabama and ran for 230 yards, nearly 5 yards a carry. How often, again, how often do you say Alabama loses this? I think what we need to do now is evaluate these teams a little bit differently. I think that's something that's going to be very important. Is this is not Nick Saban's Alabama team. We need to evaluate them based on what we're seeing now. We have data points, we have sample sizes, we have on-field results now. More than a year of Kalen DeBoer in Tuscaloosa. We need to evaluate Alabama based on what we're seeing trending wise on a Kalen DeBoer Alabama team. Okay. I think we need to reshift our focus a little bit on this because it's extremely important to make sure we are evaluating these teams correctly. Alabama lost this game in ways that Nick Saban teams didn't usually lose them. But it's not like Tommy Castellano said, they don't have Nick Saban anymore. And this is no slight to Kalen DeBoer. It's just a difference in program philosophy. It's a difference in coaching style. It's a difference in coaching staff. It's a difference in players. All of that. Alabama has great players. Alabama has great coaches. But it's just going to look different, and it does. And for Florida State to host top 10, number 8 ranked Alabama and go into that game with the mindset of we can be the aggressors. We can win this game. Who cares that we were 2-10 last season? We're going to start this year off the right way and beat Alabama. It's not about can we keep this close? Can we drag it to the fourth quarter? No. We want to win this game. We think we can go up by multiple scores. We think we can win this game by 2 touchdowns. Boom. They go out and do that. So massive win for Florida State, which should find themselves inside the top 15. Now, think about that one. This is going to be, and Brett Sancia said it when he was on the show from Pick Six Previews when we were looking at evaluating these teams that were a little bit off the radar, who weren't ranked yet, saying, okay, Florida State, are they going to be closer to 2-10? Are they going to be closer to a top 25 team? He said they're going to be closer to a top 25 team than they were a year ago. A lot has gone on in the mental psyche of the program and the players, losing those games early last season, the playoff snub hangover, all of those things taken into consideration. Florida State, though, looks like they could be a contender in the ACC, taking down Alabama. We'll see now how that schedule plays out. Next game I want to talk about is LSU and Clemson. The Battle of Death Valleys, the Battle of Tigers. When we looked at this matchup, we knew that this was possible, that LSU could win the game. I think for me, my deciding factor was I can't do it. I can't pick LSU until I see it. Now, the potential's there. I just need to see Brian Kelly win a game in week one. They put a lot of emphasis on this in the offseason, and they did it. Nussmeier was pretty good in the game, threw for 230 yards and a touchdown. And I think Nussmeier, when you have a veteran quarterback like that, it makes life easier when you have to go on the road in these tough environments. And he outplayed Cade Klubnik. He won the quarterback battle. And like I said, this could be something that voters take into consideration for the Heisman Trophy in December. Not to jump too far down the line, but these are data points that are great for your team and for your program. And LSU, the biggest thing was look at the score to this game. It was 17-10. Last year, year before that, LSU couldn't win games on defense, and they did. That was the biggest thing for me looking at this game is, all right, LSU can win a game with defense. They held Clemson to 31 rushing yards, 1.6 yards per carry. LSU's defense wasn't doing that last year. They have Harold Perkins back. Blake Baker's in year two. What a hire that was. Like we said, they're going to take a step forward. But how far of a step forward were they going to take? This was a great step for LSU. Now, this is a tone-setting win for LSU moving through this season because they do have really challenging games on that schedule. They do. And now getting a non-conference win over Clemson is going to bode well if they're on the fringe of that playoff discussion, or now you have that confidence that you beat top five Clemson, you can go contend for the SEC now. That defense is good enough. That defense is good enough. Okay. This Clemson team was one of those teams that we knew coming into the season what they would look like. LSU, questions. Ohio State, questions. Texas, questions. Bama, questions. Oregon, questions. Georgia, questions. Notre Dame, questions. And not to just repeat myself, but Clemson and Penn State were the two teams that, you know what? We know what they're going to look like because we just saw this team last year. It's, do they have another gear? Can they take a step forward? Can they reach a level above what they were a year ago? Clemson, they looked like the same team as last year. Okay, so let's do this. Clemson was a playoff team last year. Maybe Clemson's not a top five team. Maybe they're not. Maybe they don't reach that this year. For LSU, you're still beating a top 12 team, you're still beating a top 10 team right there. That's a great step. You saw the defense play well. Okay, maybe we're not beating a top five team, but if we're looking at Clemson from last year, but we held a good offense. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley been together for 3 years. 10 points. 10 points. 261 total yards. That's a great momentum shift. That's a great win. That's a great program win for LSU. Looking at the rest of the season, how are we going to have to win games? Is it going to have to be on the shoulders of Garrett Nussmeier? Is he going to have to throw for 350 yards for us to win? No. They can win with defense. They can operate a normal offense. They don't have to go throw the ball 55 times a game to go win. They can win a game with defense. The defense is going to be able to help them out, which is crucial in SEC play. So, a lot of credit to Brian Kelly for putting the emphasis they did on this game, finally winning a week one season opening matchup for the first time since Joe Burrow's 2019 LSU team. And then on the other side of that, Cade Klubnik and Clemson, they've got to do some soul searching here. If not, that's fine. They're just going to be the same team that they were a year ago, and that's okay. And we know how to evaluate that. And you know what? They'll probably make the playoff. Maybe they win the ACC, maybe they don't, but they're not contending for a national championship if this is their ceiling. If we've already seen their ceiling, they have to have another gear. And can they find that other gear? That's going to be the big question for them as they navigate a schedule that's pretty easy. But this was a matchup style game. This was a talent equated game. They did not get the job done. They were at home. They were at home. I would feel differently. Ohio State playing Texas, Texas losing that game 14-7. Okay. I get it, Texas. You're on the road. I get it, Arch Manning. You were on the road. Really your first true humongous game start. I mean, you could feel it in the air. No, Clemson at home, veteran quarterback, been in the system with this offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, for 3 years. No, Clemson, you can't score 10 points at home. You can't lay a clunker like that. That just can't happen. So soul searching to do for Clemson, and we will see how that shakes out for the rest of the season because I don't know. I don't think they can do it. I don't think that they can contend for a national championship with this level of play. I think they are going to need more, and we've not yet seen that. All right. Moving on, Notre Dame and Miami. This was a really, really good game last night. I think Notre Dame found some answers late. They scored 17 in the fourth quarter. They finally got the offense going there. The defense was starting to play really well. There was a period where Miami had four straight drives without a first down. And my my big takeaway from this game, yeah, it was sloppy. It was pouring. There was some tropical rain down there. Just looking at the two teams, we know Notre Dame under Marcus Freeman is going to be physical. We know they're going to play fast. We know they're going to be solid defensively. Miami, though, looked really good at the line of scrimmage. They were physical. They looked fast. Carson Beck was sharp. This Miami team, again, this was one of the wait and see teams. This Miami team, if this is the team that's going to show up every week, this team can contend for the ACC championship and potentially make noise in the playoff. I'm not going to label anybody yet. It's week one. The job in week one is not to overreact and not to justify your preseason projections. That is the goal after week one. Do not overreact and do not justify. Those are the two rules. We live by them on this show. No overreacting, no justifying. Okay? Miami can be a contender playing like this. If Carson Beck is going to be sharp, if he's going to be able to lead that offense, how about that catch from CJ Daniels? I mean, my goodness, what a one-handed catch for a touchdown. I thought the ball was going to be intercepted. I think the Notre Dame safety thought the same thing, and Daniels just reaches up with one hand, snags it out of the air, falls into the end zone a, a huge momentum play right there. Great flash, great body control, everything. Malachi Tony, he had a great game too. He was all over the field, six catches, 82 yards, and another score too. So Miami's got two really solid receivers. Mark Fletcher was very physical, the running back. And this Miami offense has some pieces, but that defense was the thing too that looked pretty physical. Jeremiah Love kept in check, only 10 carries for 33 yards. Again, Notre Dame was down in the game, but the offensive game plan confused me for Mike Denbrock. I'm thinking, all right, you got a first-time starting quarterback, young kid on the road. It's raining. Man, I'm thinking I got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I'm handing that ball off 35 times. Nope. No, 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 no. 16 carries split between Price and Love. CJ Carr carried it 11 times. He did score. Great work with his legs on that final drive to get that game tying touchdown. But I will tell you, Notre Dame is going to be okay, but you're not going to go win these huge games if you're making CJ Carr throw it 30 times. You rely on your strengths. You got a great offensive line. You got great running backs. That's what you need to focus on and use if you're Notre Dame, which is why I was a little bit surprised from the game plan from Mike Denbrock. I think Chris Ash, that defense is going to come along. That's going to be good. This is a really good Miami offense. They're at home. I was okay with Notre Dame's defensive performance looking at the game because yeah, relative. This is a top 10 game. I mean, it's not like they went out to against Boston College and they're giving up 27 points. No, no, this is top 10 Miami. Miami's a legitimate team, and they proved that. They got a big victory, huge for their program because the questions for them of can they win the big games? Can they actually compete at that level? And yeah, they got a win here. They're going to be ranked squarely inside the top 10. They're going to be labeled as a contender, maybe overtake Clemson as the favorite to win the ACC now. Could this potentially be a four-team race between Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, Florida State, maybe inserting itself in there? I think these are the questions. The ACC is one of the more interesting conference races that we're going to see now, given how good Miami looks. Clemson looks about the same as last year. Florida State surprises, and then Georgia Tech surviving that game. I mean, if you're Georgia Tech, yeah, just on to the next one, right? So this ACC race is shaping up to be something that's could get pretty entertaining as we move along. And then just some other notable results in the game too. Tennessee, and there I'm going to have a reason for saying all this. Tennessee beat Syracuse 45 to 26. And I'm just going to say, Lee Corso, that really is all I have to say, Lee Corso. South Carolina beats Virginia Tech 24 to 11. Lenora Sellers, he looked really good. Lee Corso is 6-0. What a way to go out for the legend. I mean, the game day crowd, they had to close the street behind or between the the basketball arena and the football stadium on campus at Ohio State. They had to close the street right between the two because the crowd was so big, because so many people were at game day. The atmosphere was electric. There had to be about 150,000 people on campus itself. Not everybody went to the game. High Street was obviously completely full. People coming down for game day to see Corso. And then inside the stadium, that was just a tremendous way to honor him for Ohio State and Texas to do that. ESPN, Fox, everybody in the college football world paying respects and honor to the great Lee Corso after being a part of this game for more than 50 years. I mean, what an incredible career as a player, as a coach, as a TV personality, an entertainer, and a friend and mentor. A tremendous career from Lee Corso. Picks Brutus his first love to beat Texas. Stadium goes wild, and then goes 6-0 with his picks. Florida State over Alabama, his alma mater. He's like, he was the lone wolf on the set to pick it. He did it with confidence. Florida State gets the win for him. Ohio State won. LSU beats Clemson, South Carolina over Virginia Tech, Miami over Notre Dame, and he got Tennessee over Syracuse. So a great run for Coach Corso. The sport going to look completely different without him. Game day Saturday mornings are not going to be the same without him. End of a true era, like we've said before, not known it without him. Lee Corso, one of the great college football figures of all time. Now, we have got TCU and North Carolina tonight. We will see Bill Belichick's debut. We'll give a quick look at that game on Thursday on that show to give you guys our takeaways and what we really think this Bill Belichick era is going to look like in Chapel Hill. Going to be very interesting. Lots of stars are going to be on site today. Michael Jordan, Julius Peppers are headlining that crew of big figures in the North Carolina world that will be there on campus. So stay tuned to that one. That game kicks off at 8 p.m. tonight. We have a full prime time slate for you. And that is our show. Big results in week one. Like I said, here's my closing statement. I've repeated it 4 times. I'm going to give it to you a fifth. Do not overreact and do not justify. Those are the words that I will leave you with today. And we will see you guys next time on the Thursday show. Make sure you are staying tuned to our social media at Saturday Cadence. You can check out our website, tsilverbulletin.com. Then if you want to find me on socials at Blake Biscardi, some good content coming for you from TikTok. Trying to really get that growing. That's been hot lately. A couple 100,000 views on the last few videos. You guys seem to really be engaging with the content there. So at Blake Biscardi on Twitter and TikTok there. Guys, like I said, thank you for listening. We'll see you on the Thursday show. Enjoy TCU and North Carolina tonight. Have a happy Labor Day and God bless.